So once we have a polynomial, we actually know the general shape of the graph, and it's really just based on the degree. So based on the degree, we can know the general shape of the graph. So if something has a degree of 1, so we call it like first degree, we have a fancy name for those polynomials and we call them linear. So if I have so for example, it could be like y equals 3x, right? That has a degree of 1. So anything that has a degree of 1 is always going to have the shape of a straight line, okay? So that's always going to be the shape of something that has a degree of 1, okay? If something has a degree of 2, so we call it second degree, right? So that could be like y equals 3x squared plus 7. It could be like y equals 2x plus 3 times x plus 3, right? Both of those have degrees of 2. We call those quadratics, right? We just had a whole unit on this. Anytime we have something with x squared, that's quadratics. And quadratics are always going to have the shape of a U, right? It could be upside down, it could be right side up, but generally it's a U shape. If something has a degree of 3, so we call it a third degree, right? So that means like x to the third, or you could have it in factored form as well. We call it a cubic function. The cubic shape is kind of hard to describe. It's basically like, some people say it's like a sideways S or kind of like an N, but it looks generally like this, okay? So that's what we call a third degree polynomial, right? So if it has a degree of 3. And then lastly, if something is a fourth degree, right? So it has a degree of 4, we call it a quartic. Think of it like a quarter, 4 quarters, and $1. It's a quartic function. So a quartic function or a fourth degree function is always going to have kind of this like W shape. So it might look a little wonky, but generally it's a W shape. So what we can do, again, if we can identify the degree, we know the shape. So let's look at these examples over here, right? So remember, in factored forms, we add the exponents, so these have invisible ones. So my degree, I add these together, so it's a degree of 4, right? So we know anything with a fourth degree, a degree of 4, is going to have this W shape, right? And we know that the fancy name is quartic, right? This has a degree of 2, right? So it has a degree of 2, which means it's going to be, if you look back at your notes, it's a U shape, right? And we call that a quadratic. And then lastly, right, this has a degree of 3. The highest exponent is 3. Anything that has a degree of 3 is this weird like S-shape, N-shape situation, right? And that's what we call a cubic function. Okay, so again, once you identify the degree, you know what the shape of the graph is going to